Welcome. This is a masterclass recording on the topic of how to tame your inner critic and beat self-doubt. Welcome. I'm Simone. I'm the owner and mindset and emotional well-being coach at Emerald Connection Life Coaching. I am an inner critic survivor, or negative inner critic survivor, and a recovering perfectionist. And that means I live my life on my terms. My mission is to help people break free and step into their true power without the limiting effects of a negative self-inner critic. The talking points for today's masterclass will cover who our inner critic is, the origin of that inner critic, whether that inner critic has absolute power or not, what the effects are of a negative inner critic, how to unseat it, and I would like to position an offer that I'm currently running in order to help people to unseat their inner critic. So let's get started. Who is our inner critic? It's that judgmental and demeaning aspect of our personality. Things you'd never say to another person, but you think it and you believe it about yourself. And examples about these are, you'll never achieve anything. You're such a loser. You're not good enough. Who do you think you are? You're worthless. You're such a failure. The beautiful part is that it's not innate. We weren't born with this. It's learned. And where does this come from? This comes from the repeated harsh remarks and criticisms that we receive and experience when we are as children. And it comes from a variety of sources, ranging from our teachers, our parents, carers and guardians, the media, our peers, and society at large. We're always bombarded with messages about how we are not perfect and, who we should be and what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be who we are. And as a result, the positive aspects of our personalities and of who we are overemphasized, and we are validated for that. But on the other hand, we are encouraged to hide our weaknesses and flaws, and we are judged for those weaknesses and flaws. And the more we are validated for this identity, of what our strengths and challenges or weaknesses are, we are more driven to perfectionism. We are more driven to be self-judgmental and critical of ourselves. The sad thing is, it's not just ourselves, but we project that onto others. So by hiding those weaknesses and those flaws and the things that we are not particularly good at, and that society doesn't see the value in appreciating and validating about us, drives us to perfection. That shame is what drives us to perfection, because we are always striving to meet others' expectations. Yet we still feel unworthy and incomplete. And that drive is for perfection, and self-criticism and judgment is where that inner critic takes seat. And its job is to keep us small and true to that assumed identity of you're not good enough, you're only good at this, or, who do you think you are? And over time, this solidifies into our belief system, which is destructive and limiting. So does this inner critic have absolute power or not? I don't think so. However, we get stuck in a cycle of that belief system is what drives us to find evidence, supporting evidence to meet those stories and to match those stories. And by doing that, it drives the self-defeating thoughts and self-sabotaging behavior, which, no surprise, leads to poor outcomes. And then we feel stuck, we feel unmotivated, we miss opportunities. And we continue with the negative self-talk. And this reinforces those beliefs that drive the inner critic. So we get stuck in this loop and we don't know how to get out of it. So the effects of this loop that we get stuck in with the negative self-criticism, it's our worst enemy, and it deters us from going after what we really want. We project that criticism onto others, where you find you're very critical of others. And the reason for that, so we can feel better about ourselves, because we don't always want to look at the flaws in ourselves or the learning opportunities that present themselves. And it impacts us mentally and emotionally. And I'm sure you can resonate with some of these feelings, if not all of them, in terms of the effects of a negative inner critic. Low self-esteem, feeling depressed, constant criticizing of yourself, distrust of others and yourself, of your own judgment, self-loathing, no respect for yourself, for your boundaries, or even for others' boundaries. And you find that happens with you as well in return, where your boundaries are not respected. So where do you start with taming that inner critic? I have a basic 4-step process, which I will talk you through, that you can start with to start taming that inner critic. I want you to bear in mind, though, that this process has many steps beneath it. I've highlighted 4, but it is an intricate process that I go through with clients, and it's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing. It is the purpose of presenting it to you today is for you to understand that there is a way to start, where to start. So let's get going. So the first step in this process is to be mindful of your inner dialogue. What does that mean? Be aware of the thoughts that you think about yourself, the perception you have of yourself. This gives you the power to start changing that story. By being mindful about what you're thinking, why you're thinking it, when you are thinking it, you can start reframing the story of that inner critic. Mindfulness and awareness is the start. It's the key to begin this cycle of taming that inner critic. Secondly, examine the evidence. The truth is in the evidence. So a process that I usually take my clients through is a 2-column process where I ask them to take a specific belief that they have about themselves, a particular belief that really drives the inner critic and fuels that inner critic, and write down all the supporting evidence that supports that particular belief. Evidence means that it's a concrete thing. It's not just a perception of something, or it's something concrete. And start looking at patterns. What's coming up there? A very interesting example that I can mention to you here is I went through this exercise with one of my clients, and she examined the belief of I'm not good enough in her particular career and in her particular vocation. And we started looking at the evidence that she presented. And by the 4th point, she had a whole page written out of all the evidence that supported that belief, that she believed supported that belief. And by the 4th point, I asked her, are you spotting a pattern here? And it became evident that her evidence was based on her perception of what others' expectations were of her. Let me say that again. The evidence that she presented for that belief of I'm not good enough was based on her perception of what she thought others expected of her. That's not the truth. That was not her truth. So what is your truth? What is your truth that supports or refutes that belief? This is a process that you really got to dig deep for, that you've got to be brave to go there. But being brave means that you have courage to change the story. changing the story is where your power lies. The third step, now once you've examined that evidence, once you start seeing that the evidence does not have legs, there's no foundation for that, you can start replacing it with empowering statements. What is the truth? I am always learning. My journey is about growth and whatever it is that's true for you. So look at what feels empowering to you. Not the opposite of negative, but what feels empowering. And the last and probably the most important aspect of this process is self-compassion. So easily we practice compassion towards our family, to our children, to others, and to friends, but so little kindness and self-compassion for ourselves. And think about self-compassion or compassion as when a friend talks to you, a really close friend talks to you about something that has happened or a mistake that they've made. How do you respond to that? Someone that you really care about, someone that you really love. There's no judgment. There's no criticism. You encourage that person. Look, what have you learned from this? How can you prevent this from happening again? And that is the basis of compassion. No judgment, no criticism. Seeing your journey as a growth experience, seeing the experiences that you go through every day as mirrors to what you need to learn. That is so empowering and so much less stress. And it's joyful because you're always looking, what new can I learn today, instead of, what negativity awaits me today. It's all about the mindset. So in the end, the goal is to change that overbearing, judgmental, demeaning voice of your inner critic to a more supportive, more nurturing, more compassionate and empowering tone. So in summary, inner critic is learned. This is based on experiences from childhood through young adulthood, even into adulthood. If it has been learned, it can be unlearned. The effect of this inner critic is limiting. It is critical that you understand that the effects is what is limiting you from achieving the life that you know you deserve and you believe that you want for yourself. And the power is, the choice is yours to change that cycle. The choice is yours to start that deep inner work, to change that inner critic from critical to empowering. Consistently practicing those 4 steps that I talked through earlier and making small changes, continuing your process of awareness, of self-compassion, of changing stories within your head, of proving and disproving evidence that you believe supports that inner dialogue. You've already come a long way if you practice that on a daily basis, that awareness. If you are interested in talking more about how to unseat your inner critic, then contact me. I've put the website link in the comments, and you can contact me on my website. Let's have a chat. Let's see how we can help you to unseat your inner critic. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again soon.